Welcome. I'm Kevin Delaney. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to just share a few thoughts with you about a concept that's very significant and very important in a discipline known as NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, but also has a lot of application and implication for everybody, really. It's not a new concept at all, but it's a concept that has been named reframing in the Neuro-Linguistic Programming vocabulary. So this is a book on reframing. It's by Bandler and Grinder, who are the founders of NLP. And I wanted to just share a few thoughts on reframing with you and what reframing is and how reframing can change your life. Quite literally, it really can. Reframing, as I understand it, as I know it to be, has to do with being able to shift your mental perspective. That's basically what it is. Being able to shift your mental perspective on a certain topic or a subject, whatever it might be. It's quite literally to see something from a new angle or a different angle. Obviously, this is not anything new, but what's interesting, again, about reframing as it's presented in NLP is it really almost presents it as a specialized discipline. And it's really quite interesting to look at it from that perspective and to study it in that way. Because if you think about it, that is the mental act that is at the root of virtually all innovation. All innovation, all invention involves the ability to see something, see a problem, see a question from a somewhat different angle. Everybody else has been looking at it this way. Everybody else has been assuming this about the problem, whatever it might be. But along comes that great innovator and says, let me look at it from a different angle. Let me consider some aspects of the problem, maybe that other people haven't considered. Maybe let me see it in a whole different light. And again, that is basically what underlies all innovation, all invention, and therefore all human progress. I heard a quote one time from Albert Einstein, and I'm not sure if he actually said this. There are a lot of quotes attributed to him which are not really from him, but there was a statement that he made. He was asked about his experience of discovering the theory of relativity. He was asked what was the most challenging part of coming up with the theory of relativity, and he said, learning to think about the problem. Learning to think about the problem. In other words, learning how to come at the problem. And, history is full of all kinds of problems that many people thought were insurmountable, precisely because they were coming at it from the wrong angle. And then somebody comes along and says, wait a minute, why does it have to be that way? And they're the ones who figure it out, or they're the ones who propel things forward. So anyway, this is the basic concept of reframing. And in this book, the authors relay a fable, which I had heard this some years ago. It's actually a really good story. It's very long. I won't tell you the whole story here, but it's basically the idea of, it's a Chinese fable. There was a farmer who had a farm, and he had a prized horse on this farm. And one day the prized horse ran away. And his neighbors said to him, "Oh, that's so terrible. Oh, we feel so bad for you. Oh, what a terrible tragedy. Your horse ran away." And the farmer's response was, "Maybe." The next day, the horse showed up back at the farm. And he had two wild horses who were following along behind him. He made two new friends and brought them back to the farm with him. And the neighbors said, "Wow, this is wonderful. You not only got your horse back, you got two bonus horses on top of that. That's great." And his response was, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son, who was, let's say, 17 years old or so, was out riding one of these new wild horses, didn't realize quite how wild they were, and the horse threw him off, and he broke his leg. The neighbor said, "Oh, isn't that terrible? That's so awful. Your son broke his leg. Oh my God, he must be in such pain. What a terrible thing to happen." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, war broke out. And the authorities in charge of the army were going around house to house to find able-bodied young men to conscript them for the army. And they came to the farmer's house and they saw the poor son lying in bed with a broken leg. And they said, well, we certainly can't use you. We don't want you in the army, so you're exempt. And the neighbor said, what a wonderful thing. Your son doesn't have to go off and fight in this war. And the farmer's response was, maybe. And this story goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's no end to it, actually. And I hope you can see the moral of the story here. You know, it's easy to say something is good or something is bad, but things are really only good or bad in a certain context. It depends on how you look at it. It may have seemed like the horses running away from the farm was a terrible thing until you realize the next day that in fact he came back with 2 additional horses. Well, then now it seems like a wonderful thing, but is it really? Because the son broke his leg riding one of these other horses. It depends on how you look at it, and that's the basic idea again behind reframing. It says that so much of what we experience in life and the meaning, of course, that we find in things is actually up to us. We assign meanings to things, and we often don't realize that we're doing this. Sorry, I keep scratching my nose here. For some reason, I have an itchy nose today. But yeah, that's the basic idea behind reframing. And Bandler and Grinder in this book, they talk a lot about reframing largely in a therapeutic context. And they tell a story, for example, of a woman who some might consider to be a neat freak. And one of the things that she was absolutely just obsessive about was she didn't want to have footprints in the carpet. Now, this wasn't people tracking in mud or dirt into the house. This was actually the pile of the carpet being pressed down by people's feet. She would obsessively clean the carpets, vacuum the carpets, because she didn't like seeing, the outline of people's shoes in the carpet. And I'm sparing you a lot of details here, but what the therapist who worked with her was able to get her to see, the angle that he was able to get her to see it from, was essentially, he said, do you realize that if there are no footprints in your carpet, that means that you're all alone? She lived in a house with a number of other people. There was her husband, there was her kids, her children. And what he did was he got her to visualize the carpet with footprints all over it. And she, she got a disgusted look on her face. Oh, those footprints on the carpet. And he says, okay, you've seen that and now you've experienced that. Now I want you to imagine a carpet with no footprints on it. And she said, yes. That's what I like. That's what I like. And he said, okay. You got your carpet now with no footprints, but realize that the fact that there are no footprints on that carpet means you're all alone. There's nobody in the house with you. You're all by yourself. Because as long as there are people in the house, they're going to make footprints on the carpet. And this helped her to see the problem or the issue from another angle. And one thing I'm very often doing when I work with people in a context of, people come to me for voiceover coaching, teaching, and whatnot, is I notice that a lot of people have a lot of self-limiting beliefs. And I'm always trying, I've always done this, even before I became familiar with the concept of reframing, getting people to see things from a different angle. A lot of people, for example, have a kind of fear or phobia when it comes to auditioning. People get very nervous. It's almost like they have this terrible anxiety, over auditioning. And I ask people to talk me through it. Talk me through exactly what you're feeling here. And they'll often say, well, I remember one actress that I work with, she was saying that she feels when she's auditioning for something, she said, I feel like I'm on trial. I feel like I'm on trial. Well, that's a terrible feeling. I wouldn't want to feel like I'm on trial. And proposing alternate perspectives to say, what if instead of feeling like you were on trial when you were auditioning for something, what if you were able to feel like this is an opportunity for me as an actor to share who I am and do what I love? After all, that's why I got into acting, right? I got into acting because I love to do this. Well, here's an opportunity to do it. You know, here's an opportunity to meet some great people. You know, there's always going to be, if you have to show up somewhere, which sometimes you do as an actor. In voiceover, you often don't go anywhere, you know, to do the audition. You do it from home. But if you do, let's say you have to go to a studio and there's a waiting room there full of other actors, well, you know, you can make friends in the waiting room, but you can also potentially make friends with and make business contacts with the people who are going to listen to you. What if you saw it from that angle? A lot of actors, of course, get very, very hung up on the idea of, are they going to pick me? Are they going to hire me? Are they going to cast me? And I like to present the kind of alternate view to say, that's not your job description. Your job description is to show up, perform, be funny, be interesting, be memorable, whatever you can be. You're not in casting. That's not your job. And it's funny how that kind of, people say, you know, I never thought of it that way. I'm an actor. I'm not a casting director. It's not my job to, you know, be concerned about who gets the part or who doesn't. Again, a slightly different view of the process. I like to say to people, again, who get really kind of hung up on this whole idea of, am I going to get it? I hope I get it, but what if I don't get it? You know, I hope they like me. What if they don't like me? What if they reject me? What if this is all a big waste of time? I say, what if, before you even began this process, what if you said, again, I'm going to go, I'm going to have some fun, I'm going to do what I know how to do, and as far as casting goes, or you know, casting decisions, it is perfectly okay if they cast me. It's perfectly okay if they cast somebody else. It's not about they cast me or they don't cast me. They're either going to cast you or they're going to cast somebody else. And understand that when you get the job, a whole bunch of other people are not getting the job, right? So see it from their perspective. They didn't get turned down for the job. You just got hired for the job, right? So it's not about they didn't want you or they didn't like you. No, they either did like you enough to want to cast you for it and hire you and work with you, or they decided in this particular instance, for this particular project, we would want to work with this person who happens to not be you. And it's amazing, again, how people say, God, that's like such a better way of looking at it. You know, I feel so free. And like, I want to audition now. I can't wait to get to my next audition. It's funny how the slightest change like that, that slight little shift in perspective can end up having a very significant change, a very significant effect on somebody's whole attitude, their whole demeanor, their energy level. That's what's amazing to me, is how, depending on how people see what they're doing, how people represent to themselves what it is that they're doing, people's energy level changes. People actually become more enthusiastic. People actually get fired up now. Whereas before they were like, oh, God, you know, I got another audition and this idea, you know, maybe, you know, I'm going to be on trial. Well, that's not very inspiring. But again, if you think of it in a different way, it can actually boost your enthusiasm, your excitement, and make it a whole different kind of process for you, which then in turn makes you do a better job. People like you more because you're radiating a positive energy. Anyway, I encourage everybody to think about this. Reframing, again, all innovation has to do with this basic ideas, shifting of perspective, being able to see things from a new angle, a new perspective. Think about it, look into it. If you want, check out this book. Although honestly, it's not an introductory text, Reframing by Bandler and Grinder. You should have already read at least some things on NLP, because the first chapter I think would be accessible to anybody, but beyond that, it's not an introductory text at all. So anyway, thanks, and I'll talk to you later.